Thank you and good afternoon. My name is Ken Godshaw. I worship at the Mount Kisco Church. I'm here to speak a little bit about our prison ministry, and I'd like to yield the floor to my particular friend, Pamela Zimba. Pamela is the founder of Lilac House, which is the first transitional home in Westchester County for women leaving prison for civilian life. In the last year, she received a $200,000 grant from the Ford Foundation to support her work. She has been interviewed by CNN, and she serves on the advisory council of the Interfaith Prison Partnership, which is the ecumenical organization we do our work through. She's also preached at 4 Presbyterian churches in the last year. Please welcome Pamela Zimba.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. I am nervous. So, as he said, my name is Pamela Zimba. I'm formerly incarcerated. I served 6 years between Bedford Correctional and Takata Correctional Facility. Upon my release, I ended up at the shelter in Valhalla, Volunteers of America. And I think that was my first realization as to why people reoffend upon being released. The shelter was terrible. There was open drug use in there. The facility, like when I walked in there, I literally felt like I was walking right back into the prison. Same beds, same mattress, same locker, same institutional feel. I was just pretty much a work release. Like I could leave during the day, but I had to come back to my cell at night. And they don't really support you in the way that you need. If somebody coming home from prison's needs are completely different. We don't have Wi-Fi in there. There's no cell phones. There's no laptops. There's no tablets. So if you have an individual who has done a significant amount of time and doesn't even know what Wi-Fi is, there's nobody to teach them. There's no one to show them. There's no job training. There's no resume writing. There's no cover letters. There's no interview clothes. There's no transportation. Even if you got a job interview, there's nothing. When I was released, I think my voucher was $590 to find somewhere to live in Westchester. Where I was going to live with $590, I don't know, and neither did they. Because they would give us lists of apartments, but the apartments were like $1,000, $800, knowing that the voucher was $590. If you work while you're in the shelter, you have to pay rent. So they'll take about 90% of your paycheck while you're there. So you can't save any money to actually get out of the shelter, but you can't use the voucher to get out either because there's nowhere for you to go. So it basically kind of showed me why people ended up committing crimes just to literally survive once they've been released. I was fortunate enough to have support from my family, so they bought me a laptop. Like people are like, well, why didn't you just go live with your family? I didn't want to go live with my family. I thought I'm gonna go to the shelter, get a voucher so I can get out, get my own place, and get stable. Like I said, I didn't realize my voucher was only gonna be $590 at the time. I didn't realize that I couldn't pay a portion. It has to be $590. So I can't find an apartment for $1,000 and they pay the $590 and I pay the balance. You can't do it, it's not allowed. And so I was out of the shelter within 60 days, thank God, because of the support of my family. And if I didn't have that support, I literally don't know how long I would have been sitting in that shelter. There were people that had been there for 2 years. And I probably might have been one of those people if I would have never made enough money to cover the rent plus be able to save. And their rent it's a realistic, they charge you, I think like one girl said they wanted her to pay $3,000 to live in the shelter. So, I mean, it was just a vicious cycle. So that was my motivation to start the Lilac House. I didn't want anybody to have to go back into the shelter system. I didn't want somebody to feel like they had to commit crimes just to eat or be able to buy soap or sanitaries or anything like that. It didn't make sense to me. And it also didn't make sense to me because there's only 3 female facilities left in the state of New York and 2 of them are in Westchester. So why is there no housing for people being released? So luckily when I was incarcerated, I got my associate's degree through Bar College. I was able to do a fellowship with the Ford Foundation. I ended up being hired by them in 2020, and they were really instrumental in helping me with this work. They introduced me to a woman named Susan Burton. She was formerly incarcerated herself, 20 years in and out of prison, finally got clean, opened her first house. She now has 12 houses that she's opened in California, and she's helped 30 other people open houses across the state of New York. I am one of her houses in New York. There's another one in Brooklyn, and there's another one in Long Island. She's amazing. I was talking about it from 2018, but she was the first person to really put her money where her mouth is, in a sense. She gave me a $50,000 grant to initially start, and nobody would rent the property to me. Once I told them there was going to be formerly incarcerated people living there. All the realtors that I worked with, people were just ghosting us left and right once they found out. And so I went back to Susan. I told her, I said, I don't know if I'm going to make this happen because nobody will rent a house to me. So she said, look for a house to buy. And she bought the house. And she was like, once we own it, they can't tell us that we can't let formerly incarcerated people live there. And so how my program works is we bring them in. We have a clothing closet, so we provide clothes, hygiene products, shoes, transportation. We make sure every single need is met for them when they come home, because most people don't have anything. And then we help them if they want to get a certification, if they want to go back to school, if they want to do a trade, whatever they want. We have a stipend of $5,000 per woman to get them started. And then that's usually the first year, just building a plan, getting them in a stable position. And in the second year, the main focus for the women is to just work and save. We don't want them to have to deal with DSS once they leave. We don't want them to be on food stamps or Medicaid or trying to get a voucher or any of that. We want them to be making enough money and have enough savings that when they leave the house, they're stable. And I think that's about it.
Thank you, Pamela. I want to thank the Presbytery for their support of prison ministry in the last year or two. It's been very important and much value. I don't have much to say. I just want to briefly share some of the feedback that we have received about our work. As you may be aware, 12 or 13 of our churches, at their own expense, donate items to the prisons that are approved by the superintendents. These include care packages at Christmas time, activity bags for children who are visiting incarcerated mothers, release bags for women who are returning to civilian life. Here's what one incarcerated woman wrote to the Presbytery. She said, "Thank you for thinking of us in such a special way. Your gift reminds us that there are people out there who really care. Your kindness will always be remembered as the light that shined into this dark little corner of the world." Second example. This year, the Presbytery generously provided a grant of $7,000 that funded an appreciation lunch for correction officers at the 2 women's prisons we serve in Bedford. Deb Melcarrick and Tom Albert attended. Thank you. Here's what the acting state commissioner of corrections, the head of the prison system in New York, said. He said, "These events may sound small, but they are important to the women that we care for. This changes the culture inside our facilities. When correction officers feel remembered and appreciated, they behave differently, which benefits the women in their care." Jesus said, "Visit the prisoners." If you have an interest in doing this, we would be glad to work with you. Thank you very much.